Welcome to episode 3 of Essential Conversations. My guest today is Kang, and I showed him a very strange movie entitled Sleep Has Her House, which was released in 2017 and directed by Scott Barley. So this is probably the most recent movie I've covered on this channel so far, and it's probably also the most out there. So I both apologize for that, and I love the movie, but I apologize for that a bit. So I guess the first question I have is just initial reactions / what is your experience with experimental film in general? Because would you classify this as experimental?
I'm not really sure if this this falls in the category of film in general as well, because
Interesting.
I did have to watch a few experimental films for the general film classes, but nothing like this feature length, nothing like an hour 30-minute long, and I couldn't really follow a clear narrative of it. Can I ask you why you love this movie so much?
Yes, that is a very good question. Narrative doesn't exist in this. It's pretty much you want to. In my first watching of this, I tried to go for a narrative, I tried to figure something out, because you can sort of follow there's nighttime, there's daytime, there's a sense of decay and season switching and the horse period, but all of it feels very loose, and I'm not quite sure it's narrative. So I'm just gonna say it's non-narrative in general. Mm-hmm. And for what makes it so impactful is it's a visceral experience, because it's very much about retraining your eye, if that makes sense, and your mental state as well. And maybe this will be to turn the question back on you a little bit, but whenever you say that you're not sure this is a movie, what do you look for in a movie? What makes something a great movie to you, or just what makes something a movie is a better starting place? And what makes something a great movie?
I think because I'm coming from my main background is in broadcast. I'm working in broadcast. I think what differentiates just broadcast and film in general is there's a clear narrative, having a clear storyline.
Okay.
I think that's what really makes a movie, and I wasn't really sure if I was the only one not getting it, so I had to ask you if there was a clear narrative here.
There's nothing. There's no clear narrative. So why do you think why do you think film has to have a narrative? Because I know I said I wasn't going to ask any academic questions, and so you don't have to get academic if you don't want to. But I do think that there's something that's what I know, that was the instinct I had for the longest time, and it was actually Scott Barley that broke me out of that.
Mm-hmm. You had the same idea of film?
I had the same very much idea of film was a narrative thing. I obviously had seen some experimental stuff, and I was it didn't have to be narrative. But I bet you've seen other stuff, but it doesn't convince you. Usually when you watch experimental stuff, you're cool, you were able to do something. But for me, it was his film, Blue Permanent Swan Blood, which is just swirling colors and then reverse swirling colors for 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it sort of broke my mind, and I was okay, there's something here that this is film, but it's not narrative film. And so I had the same reaction initially with work like this. I
actually do love experimental video projects. That's actually what got me into starting with video production.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you heard of him, but he's Namjoon Paik. He's a Korean American video artist. He from early 40s, 50s, 60s, I think. But I saw a few of his exhibits back in Korea when I was young, and it really left a big impact on me. So that's why I decided to study video, and that's one of the big reasons why I decided to move to the States. And that's still a part of just the analog video projects that I'm still trying to bring more into the mainstream media, I guess. I do have some experience with experimental stuff, but I wasn't really sure if this if I could label this as a film.
So for you, it's not a negative thing to say it's not a film. It's just a different category of things.
Yeah, I mean,
because for some people, they come in, and I've had conversations with other people about this movie, and they'll go, "That's not a movie," and there's this sense of tone. But I didn't get that with you, and I was curious. So you would say the video art project, this is probably closer to gallery stuff.
Yeah, definitely more like installation arts, the ambient stuff. It definitely had cinematic value, merits to it. There were some shots that I thought was cool, the first 17 minutes of the slow zoom out, and I think it really worked really well because just the abstract movement of it, I really loved it, and like the audio getting really clear as we like see the waterfall getting in shape, and then also like fading it out as we like pan out and zoom that to see the entire picture. I thought it was really cool, but yeah, I wasn't really sure like what part of it would make it really like consider a film.
Yeah, and that's something that it's a hard question because I still honestly can't give you an answer. It's just at some point you sort of draw the line. Because to me, if I watch a video installation, I still consider it film. And I recently got into the idea of like, what is like, maybe we label something film has to have a narrative, but I think that it's like almost like a rectangle, or square is a rectangle. Rectangle's not a square thing. It's like, I don't even know if film's the right term because I've almost started looking at using it as just
video media.
Video media, so that it covers everything from TikToks to gallery art and movies, because they're all the same. Like they're still, this isn't so different because it still has editing, still has all this stuff, and so does TikTok, and so does film. So it's like at the end of the day, they're all video media. I think that's actually a really good way to put it, video media. So what was your reaction past uncertainty over whether or not where to classify this? Actually, speaking of uncertainty, if you had to give this a film genre, what would you say it was? Because there's a sort of a debate around how to classify this film genre-wise as well.
Like, for a genre of film, I think, like, I'm not really sure if this is a genre like specifically, but I'd just go with like abstract art. I think that's what that's the best definition I could give this.
Yeah.
Some others have been documentary. There's one of the largest ones is actually, if you like look at this on Letterboxd,
I can see that.
Which is weird to me. It's so out there for a documentary. I don't know, because a documentary I assume is based so much in reality.
I think it's mainly because like just in that lack of narrative, like that kind of. I mean, not all, like most, like a lot of good documentaries have like really good narratives, but also like, you know, like it's just like kind of just setting up a camera and just showing people what's going on. And I kind of got that feeling a little bit with some of the shots here and there.
Yeah. Okay, now that actually brings me, I'm gonna jump around a bit here. There's an interesting thing. So you said it has this almost like documentary, like setting up the camera. So how do you think this was filmed? Because this is where it gets a little bit trickier too, and gets a little bit more in the visual arts field. So when you say it has that feeling of setting up a camera, I completely agree with that. And it has a sort of raw, visceral nature, especially in the storm sequence, where it just feels like it's recording something. But the filming of that, how do you think that was achieved, like filming wise?
I'm not like what camera was it shot on?
iPhone 6.
Really? Like I would have guessed it was shot on something like, you know, some crazy like homemade camera, you know, one of them like pinhole cameras.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'd assume, but honestly I have no idea how it was shot. Like, was it mostly visual effects? Like, do you know how it was shot?
So I know a little bit, and he's talked some about it, but I don't know. I've never fully figured out how everything was done. So I know iPhone 6 was the primary camera, maybe a little bit of a Sony in there every so often, but primarily an iPhone 6 or 7, somewhere around there.
Was there like a reason behind that like creative decision, or was it just whatever he had on his hand?
He had an iPhone 6, and he actually recently, like a couple months ago, posted about getting a new iPhone and being mad that the camera's too good. So it was a little bit of a decision too. He's very much about like in the field of embrace the noise. So like when it cuts to black, it's never full black. It's always got the grain noise. And so he's very much into digital as a new medium, as a new possibility. What that quite adds here, I don't know, but it does add a weird ethereal texture to the whole thing, the constant noise. So I do think it was a creative decision, but I've also heard him mention stuff about everything from paintings being actually, in some of those frames are supposed to be actually paintings that he's done and put in there. And then I've also
was it like almost like a frame by frame animation, like
I don't he just said painting, so I don't quite know on that one, but I think some of the sequences, like the flashing light sequence at the end, I could see that being painted and then flashed. But I could be entirely wrong there, but I do also know he layered footage. So he said it sometimes, I don't remember what he said, but it was like 20 to 200, somewhere in there, that some of these shots were actually composed of like tons of different shots, which explains how you can have such a high def river and such a high def trees, and you're like, there's no way that those all were on the same shot on an iPhone. You're like, oh, it could have been composited.
There's no way that the first, like I said, the waterfall sequence could have been shot on, just single camera iPhone 6. So I was wondering how that was made.
I can't even figure out how you could have done that pull out on an iPhone, because it gets so far out that I'm like, maybe it was like a really tiny waterfall, and then the sound makes it feel bigger, but then you have the weird foreground of the trees. I'm like, well, maybe those are a different layer. I don't know. So
I mean, I caught a lot of like just the blackness and like you said, digital noise. I think it could have helped him to kind of mask the.
I think so too. I think there was a practical and as well as this sort of like strange side to it. There was very much a practical edge to it too. So that's what I don't quite understand is because I know you're big into analog as you just said, and I was big into analog for a long time, and this film is what sort of switched me around. And his work in general. But it's sort of weird because we think of analog as being reality-based, like we feel much more attached to it, but there's something weird that goes, I sort of want to say beyond reality in this film. It feels real, but it's like we just said, it's composited of so much stuff. So the fact that it can be so composited yet have almost a more visceral reaction, it's very weird. And I don't know, did you even have a visceral reaction? Because for me, I'm terrified of storms, so like those last 15 minutes are like pure terror for me.
Oh, really?
I didn't get that reaction, but like it wasn't negative. But like I said, coming from analog, I love the like noise from analog, and just the like unavoidable stuff you get just by working with analog. But like the whole point, like I believe the whole point of like switching your work like environment to digital was to kind of eliminate all the noise, like more like as clear as possible.
Yeah.
So like I wasn't sure why he really chose his film medium to be digital in this project.
That's true. I haven't thought about that because actually, like thinking about like Manuel Lubezki, the cinematographer and everything, he prefers digital because he doesn't like to have the grain, and this is completely like dead opposite of that. It's like I want it because the grain's worse. And it's less controlled.
I kind of always thought like the grain or the grains and just the noise caused by digital formats were. I mean, sometimes they're interesting and you could like make some creative stuff with it, but like for the most part, it's kind of all the same. Like there's no real that like.
You can't
like
switch.
There's not. It's not that special, I guess. Like, but with analog systems, like noise and like grains, it gets a lot more interesting in my opinion.
So what do you think? What do you think? Like something like not even digital noise, but just noise in general. What do you think that adds to an image, especially coming from an analog background? Are you talking about like doing pure images where you scratch the film and do all the painting stuff?
No, more for like analog video. That's where I mostly work with. I always kind of thought it kind of gives like almost like a memory vibe to it, like just the blurriness of it. When I rewatch it, it somehow feels more like I somehow feel more.
You feel like it's almost a memory. Like
it's almost clearer than like actual clear image.
Okay, yeah. No, I agree with that. I wonder because I feel
that's how I would remember like that situation. When that happens.
And I actually think. For me, it's the same thing. I think like whenever I watch like old home movies my parents shot or something, those feel almost more real. But those are all VHS, which is interesting. And I wonder if like our kids or in like the kids that were born like 10 years after us, if those memories for them will look more similar to something like this. You know what I mean? Like it has will the digital noise pattern become what is the memory rather than is it our era that we? But even then, we were both at the very end of the VHS era. But even then,
that wasn't even.
You weren't even answering. Okay. So we're like very, very tail end of it. So I'm sort of like, maybe that's what it is. It has this sense of nostalgia right before, right during our childhood.
I'm not really sure about that because honestly, I never grew up watching. I mean, I didn't really grow up watching that many VHS videos, and so I wouldn't really consider VHS as my childhood.
Interesting. So it's like it's just a personal connection with that.
Yeah, it's like ever since I've seen like analog footage, it's just felt more real to me. Honestly, it just. It had that more realistic vibe to it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay, technical difficulties fixed, sort of. We'll see how that works in post. So we talked a lot about just all sorts of just different topics, and we got away from the film, came back to the film in and out. But I'm curious, if you had to pick one sequence from the film, or anything that you think sticks in your mind more than others? What sequence would that be and why?
I really like just the first sequence of the slow pull out from the waterfall. I think it was just it had a lot of emphasis to me. I mean, it was like a beginning of a movie as well, but like just the constant movement and like this really like slow fade in with audio. I think it set the tone for the entire film really well.
Yeah, and I think that sequence is the one that I would probably pick as well, outside of the storm. That opening sequence, it's something so strange because it's just the length of the pullout. Like you're like, oh, he could be on like a 70 to 500, it'd be fine. But then you're like, wait, he's supposed to be on an iPhone. You're like, well, how do you get like fills the whole screen to now is this much of the screen in one where you can't really see the stitch?
And it was happening just so slowly that I wasn't really sure. Like for the most part, like is it really zooming in? I had to like constantly watch it, to test it out.
Yeah, and it's like once there's a little tree that comes in at the corner, and then you're like, aha, it is
point
zooming.
of reference, yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions for me about the film? Because obviously I'm the one that recommended it.
What did you think the ending like? I guess I'm not gonna ask you what it meant, but like, what do you think it like?
It does.
Yeah, like the ending sequence with the light or the flashing of the water reflections.
That's hard to say because I don't forget about that moment, but my brain just is like, oh, the storm is like the biggest moment for me, so that's always where I sort of stop mentally in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not mentally, but I'm just like, that's like the penultimate moment. The flashing colors at the end, I don't quite know. And I don't know you're obviously probably not intended to know because it's not like someone comes in and you're like, oh, the flashing lights always mean this. For me, it almost feels like toward the end of the storm, you stop getting those like shots of nature and you start getting these brief flashes where it looks like you're flying by something. And to me, it's almost like the horse or whatever, or us watching, have been sucked into the tornado because it gets louder and louder until that's all you hear. And so to me, it feels like maybe that ending is A, we've died, and this is some sort of afterlife, or B, it's the eye of the storm, and that all of this led up to this sort of ultimate storm of nature that's like, it's raining and there's fire, it's just this insane storm. And in that storm, we get sucked dead into the middle, and then all of a sudden there's a calm. And there's a calm. So it could be taken as you died, and oh well, you died, now some form of afterlife, or it could be something much more along the lines of there's all this, nature is calm and beautiful, but there's always this uneasiness to it that we're not the ones really in control, and then nature shows its true face and shows that we're really not in control and that it can kill us at any moment.
But there's also this like point of clarity in the middle.
There's a point of clarity in this. There's something spiritual about it, something like that. That's what I lean toward. That could be totally wrong, but that's always sort of what I've felt, at least with it, because I don't know if there's ever a clear answer, but I feel like there's something just.
Sure, don't want the English major. I'll go with your explanation.
What did you think, or was it just sort of like?
I'm gonna have to watch it like
okay,
more than once.
More than once,
to understand.
That's fair. I'm trying to think. Is there any other questions you have for me about why this movie? Anything else like that you're sort of curious about? Or, I think I answered most.
Yeah, I mean, you told me why you like this movie. Yeah.
Would you recommend this movie, and if so, to whom?
Not that I don't like this movie, but I don't think there's anyone around me that would enjoy this kind of experimental media stuff.
Okay. Would you say there's a group of people that would enjoy it? Would you think it would be more of a
in the film club?
The film club, yeah, like a film club
sort
of crowd.
Like people too far into fringe where symbolisms that don't get to them anymore.
B, I would recommend it to most people, and that maybe that's just the sadist in me,
because I lose a lot of friends.
I feel like there's something. For me, it's not important if I don't particularly care if someone really loves the movie or really doesn't love it. For me, it's much more of, because people have shown me movies that I hate. I watched Pink Flamingos with all of them recently. One of the worst things I've ever seen. But at the same time, no. But at the same time, I'm still glad I saw it. I've said I've seen it, and I opened myself up to someone else's perspective. And even if I hated that perspective, I at least gave them the time of day. And
you get to know that part of the world.
I get to know that part of the world. I get to know why those people like it and stuff. And I feel like there's something to that that there's no other film like this one unless he makes another one, which there is another one on the way, which is the only film I'm excited for in the next 3 years. I'm not kidding. Like, everyone keeps sending me trailers. I don't care. Like, once he drops, I will drop everything. But I feel like it's one of those things. I don't particularly want someone to like a movie. I want them to have seen something new. Because if you might end up loving it, you might end up hating it. But at least at that point, you know, I don't like that, I don't care, or I really love that, I do care. And it's just to sort of parse out which way you want to go. So I would say most people should check it out, especially if you're in a film club or really into artsy film or into more gallery film works. 100%, this is worth it. If you're into more normal stuff and you're a genre fan, go ahead and watch it. I don't think you'll like it, but at least you've said you've seen it and you've given it a shot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's my take on it. Maybe I would lose a lot of friends, but this time I just lost 2, so you know what, I can recover. So yeah, thank you again for coming on and for sitting through a very out there movie. I know I probably should have prepped you more. I feel a little bit bad about that, but
It's enjoyable, yeah.
I know, but it was very out there. So thank you for willing to just sit through a very slow, very intense, very singular experience of a movie, and I think we'll end the conversation there.
Sounds good.
Thank you again.